And we begin with billionaire Richard Branson, who has just successfully completed an expedition to the edge of space.
2, 1, release, release, release. Clean release. Ignition. Good rocket motor burn. There's Mach 1 trimming now.
Well, that is Branson's own winged rocket ship, the VSS Unity, detaching from the Virgin Galactic Eve. The spacecraft detaching from the plane earlier this morning and then propelling itself about 85 kilometers into the sky. Branson and a small crew have since successfully touched down back on Earth in New Mexico. Leslie and Laura McQuillan, who has been part of our special coverage throughout this morning. So a successful mission here, Laura.
Yeah, that's right. And I've just seen the Associated Press quoting Richard Branson on that ride back. We did see him chatting quite a bit with his crewmates. And apparently what he said was, quote, 17 years of hard work to get us this far, because that's how long he has been running Virgin Galactic, hoping to get tourists into space, and today taking a new leap forward in that regard. We've been watching this play out since about 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So now we're watching the landing as it came back down to Earth, gliding back down after that successful venture, as you mentioned, Michael, getting 85 to 90 kilometers of altitude. And they had about 3 to 4 minutes of weightlessness, able to float around, look back to Earth, see the curvature of the Earth before gliding back. And you can see there clapping upon that successful landing. Now, Branson wasn't actually meant to be on this flight today, but when he heard that fellow billionaire Jeff Bezos would be taking off on July 20th on his own flight on Blue Origin, which is his own spacecraft line, Richard Branson decided to jump on board, make it a huge event today, making him the first person to blast off on their own spaceship, with some 500 people, including his family members, watching. In terms of getting into space tourism, well, we know that the plan is for Virgin Galactic to take off next year commercially to get the first of its 600 paying customers on board, and they've forked out some $250,000 each for a seat. So pretty pricey at this point in time. We're hearing it could be decades before that price comes down to something more affordable, and still at that point tens of thousands of dollars. But as we've been hearing from the experts we've been speaking to throughout the day, perhaps in future it'll be like going to Disneyland. Instead of, jetting down somewhere sunny, you might jet off into space in future, and this another step towards that goal, Michael.
Laura, thank you, and thank you for this whole coverage throughout the day. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Canadian astronaut and former International Space Commander Chris Hadfield did weigh in on the significance of Virgin's launch, and here's what he had to say on the company's live stream event earlier today.
We've been dreaming of commercial spaceflight, of people being able to fly in space. I mean, since the very first pioneers started flying, the X-15, which was the wonderful program in the 60s, was so much like the profile that they're going to follow today. And then the Ansari X Prize to try and push the limits. That is very much the DNA that's on this bottle, in fact, the DNA that has allowed this vehicle to fly. And it is like all of those pioneers and the flight today, they pried the door open initially, but this crew today is really pushing it open permanently.
And again, that's Canadian astronaut and former International Space Commander Chris Hadfield. Well, with that, we want to bring once again to the program Michael Unger, Program Coordinator for the McMillan Space Center in Vancouver. Michael, thanks for hanging around and being with us once again.
Oh, yeah, it's an exciting day.
I want to begin there from what we heard from Chris Hadfield there. Pioneers creaked open the door, but now this crew has swung it wide open. Is that how you're feeling right now?
Well, absolutely. You can just sort of feel, just as Laura described, sort of like the competition of innovation that happens with private companies like Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, and how they're sort of competing with each other. And that's healthy competition that drives innovation, and hopefully that will also drive this space tourism, and eventually you'll get to that point where an affordable ticket price can be had for a regular person to go up into space and to get that overview effect, that cosmic perspective. I think that could really be a big thing for humanity's perspective on where we live.
Mm-hmm. And for people at home, what we're looking at right now is the feed that we're getting from New Mexico as they pull in the spacecraft itself, being towed into the facility on the ground in New Mexico. Michael, You obviously are in love with space. You have probably dreamed of going to space yourself. What does this mean for you personally?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm ever actually going to make it. I'm still crossing my fingers that I ever get that chance. But what I really hope for is for the kids of today, for the people that, look up in very light polluted cities and don't get that connection to space as much as humanity did, say, like 50 years ago. And so opportunities like this to really kind of like open people's eyes to the world that we live in, helps bring back that love to the world, to the planet that we have, and help us take care of it. That's really what this is all about. When we think about space exploration, what we're really doing is exploring where we live. And when you go on a trip, when you go on vacation, that feeling when you come home, you fall in love with your home again. And that's really what I think that this new space tourism could really do for humanity, is help us fall in love with the Earth again.
Tourism, but I want to pick up on a point that we were discussing about earlier, this idea of research and the way forward when it comes to scientific progress, because up until this point, space has been the purview of nation states, and now you have private enterprise moving in. They may have worked in partnership in the past, but now really private enterprise is taking the lead. How does that change the pace of progress and the type of discoveries that might be made in the future?
Well, we've already seen how NASA has been able to reach out to SpaceX to help them with their rocket program. Ever since the end of the space shuttle, they've been challenged with how to get their astronauts to the International Space Station. They've had to rely on the Russian Soyuz rockets. And, politically, there's some interesting, dilemmas there. So, they challenged SpaceX to help them create a new rocket, which they did. We saw that. With the SpaceX rocket that got the astronauts to the International Space Station. That brought down the price of rockets, that brought down the price of travel for those astronauts. That helped NASA, that helped the American taxpayers. And you're going to see the other companies, the other governments like Canada, that are also going to be going up into space. They're going to reach out to private companies in this way to also help them.
And to that, again, this is about Virgin Galactic, and we see there the spacecraft as it settles by the facility in New Mexico. This is not the only venture, though. You mentioned SpaceX, and of course that's Elon Musk's venture. We're now keeping an eye on Jeff Bezos in the coming days. Talk to us about the nature of the competition right now, the next few steps that we'll be seeing in this new space race.
Well, yeah, I mean, today was a big moment. Today was the moment where Richard Branson, had the confidence in this spacecraft to get in there himself. And like you say, it was sort of like a last minute thing, and perhaps it was a little bit of friendly competition because Jeff Bezos has also done it. But that's a huge thing optically, that shows the confidence that he has in this vehicle, and that's also going to show that the consumer confidence for people to want to get on that plane and also have that experience. And with demand will hopefully drive down the cost of these missions, and hopefully things won't push too far before
Let me jump in right now, because there you see Richard Branson. He's disembarked. Obviously very happy, very excited right now, Michael.
Oh yeah, no, it's just amazing. This is just what I was talking about. This experience that he's selling. And we're seeing him. The fruits of this incredible endeavor, an incredible accomplishment. So what you were saying was, what is this ultimately going to show is that, people are going to want to line up and buy that ticket, whether it's going to be with Jeff Bezos, with Blue Origin, or with Virgin Galactic.
Mm-hmm. And pointing out the fact that Richard Branson is 71, so it opens up space travel really to people who may not have been considered in the past in a traditional astronaut program.
Absolutely. Well, let's not discount. Richard Branson may be 70, but he's a very healthy man. I mean, look at him. He's looking pretty fit.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So very happy right now. We should also point out, though, that even though he was on that craft and it was at the end of the day successful, it was still considered a test flight. So it was not without some risk.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, these are all things that need to happen. Anytime that you go up into space, there's always an element of risk. And, this goes back to any time that humans have tried to get off of the surface of the Earth, whether it be like planes or any other vehicles. Gravity is not something that humanity works well with. The Earth wants to keep us here. So, anytime that we try to get off of the Earth, we need to make sure that all of the technology is working, or the Earth is just going to bring us right back. And we've seen that before. There's been disasters before, and there's going to be disasters again. That's another big thing, that we have to be prepared for that first time that something goes wrong and somebody might die, but is that the cost that people are willing to pay to have this type of experience? And how will that set this whole space tourism back? I'm not sure. I'm hoping that it never does happen, but there is always that risk that it does.
Well, and as they say, anyone that will be venturing to space after this successful test flight will have to be signing consent forms, informed consent forms. But again, today's not about the doomsday scenario, but the success that has been. So, Michael, some parting words right now, some thoughts from you as we wrap up the special coverage of the Galactic Virgin flight that took place today.
Well, absolutely. All kudos to Richard Branson and Virgin Galactic. They really put on a great show. This was, anyone that was watching today just saw how cool it was to get up there into the upper atmosphere of our Earth, look back down on the planet with those incredible views. This is a great day, and I'm really hoping that a lot of people there that were watching this today may take that flight at some point in the future.
Well, perhaps it will be you, Michael. But for now, thank you very much for being a part of this. Really appreciate the insight and your enthusiasm today.
Thanks for having me.
That's Michael Unger, Program Coordinator for the Macmillan Space Centre in Vancouver.